Thanks for joining us for the Cultured Meat and Future Food podcast. For this episode, we're excited to have Bjorn Orvar from ORF Genetics. Bjorn is a co-founder of ORF Genetics. He served as the CEO of the company from 2006 to 2013 and the Executive VP and Chief Scientific Officer of ORF Genetics since 2013. Bjorn received his PhD in plant molecular genetics in 1997 from the University of British Columbia, or UBC, in Canada. He was a postdoctoral fellow at McGill University in Montreal for 3 years before moving back to Iceland. Bjorn is responsible for business development with a special focus on developing an animal portfolio of growth factors for cell-cultured meat. Let's jump right in. Thanks for joining us on the Cultured Meat and Future Food Show.
So hi there, good to be with you, Alex.
Bjorn, tell us a little bit about your background and give us a quick introduction to ORF Genetics.
I'm born in Iceland. I did my undergraduate study in Iceland, and then I moved to Vancouver, Canada, and I did my PhD there. Spent 6 years in Vancouver, and then I went to McGill University. I spent 3 years there, and then I moved back home, and me and my colleague, we started ORF Genetics. It's almost 20 years ago.
Great. And so when you were at, I believe it was UBC and then McGill, were you doing research or studies on barley at that time?
No, not at all. I was just studying plant molecular genetics, and I was working with completely different model systems like tobacco, Arabidopsis, and so forth. So I didn't think about barley at that time. It wasn't until I moved back home to Iceland that I started to think about barley. Farmers in Iceland were trying to cultivate barley in Iceland. There is difficult to grow most of the plants here in Iceland because where we are located in the northern hemisphere and so forth, but they were doing quite well with barley, so I more or less became interested in the barley plant as you could grow it in Iceland actually.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And so tell us a little bit about barley and more specifically how barley helps advance research in different stem cell technology, skincare, and of course, most importantly, cell cultured meat.
Yes, well, our focus or our initial idea was to develop a new production platform for recombinant proteins such as growth factors using plant as the host. And we looked into different kinds of plant species, and we came to the conclusion that the barley actually could be really interesting. First of all, barley is quite a good protein producer in the seed. And then most importantly, barley is a more or less biologically contained species. It means that it's not going to spread its pollen around and so forth. So it's a closed system. And if you're going to grow this in field, for example, it's really important for the regulatory body and so forth to have a plant that is a closed system. And then if you are working with barley, you can grow barley more or less everywhere, even here in Iceland, as I said. And so this opens the opportunity to grow barley in areas that are not competing with food production, for example. And this is something that we believe is very important in terms of producing, for example, growth factors for cell-cultured meat, that you are not going to take up space for growing food plants because you can move these plants into remote areas, for example, and cooler climates and so forth. So barley is a very interesting species.
Great. And all of the barley that is used to then extract the growth factors, and we'll get to that in a second, is all grown in Iceland. Is that right?
Yes, what we actually decided to do in the beginning was to use the geothermal energy to help us in a way. Iceland has a lot of geothermal energy, sustainable energy. This is very cheap energy. So we have many greenhouses here, even if it's cold temperature. And our idea was to grow these barley plants in the beginning, or at least the first generations, inside a greenhouse. So today we grow the first 3 generations on average in our greenhouse. This is a geothermal greenhouse, like I say. And we use hydroponic cultivation, and we grow these plants not in soil. We grow it in a volcanic pumice. We have lots of that here in Iceland because of the volcanoes. So it's a very clean operation. It produces lots of barley under prime condition within a glass house or in a greenhouse. And so this is the way we decided to do it initially. And we're still using this greenhouse for the first 3 generations or so. But then if we move into bulk production, we need to cultivate much more. Then we move it outside. And we have been doing that both in Iceland for many years and also for the last 5 or 6 years, we have also done this cultivation, in-field cultivation in Canada.
Okay, great. And barley is also used for a lot of the other products that your team develops. Is that right? So, for example, some of the other products that you have that are used for, I believe it's skincare industry and biopharma.
Yes, so our focus has been producing portfolio of different human growth factors. And we launched our first product line, Isokine growth factors for stem cell research, in 2008. But in 2010, we launched a completely different product line, which is a skincare line, a premium skincare line, using some of those human growth factors that we were producing for stem cell research. This is called BioEffect, and this was in, like I say, in 2010. This product, this brand became very popular, and so we had to put a lot of resources into following this success. And today we are now in 27 markets globally, and mostly in premium doors and so on. So this is a completely different operation than from just producing human growth factors for stem cell research. So you could say we are in a way a schizophrenic company.
And for BioEffect, that is a product that you sell B2B. There is no kind of consumer facing product from ORF Genetics. Is that right?
No, so the brand BioEffect, this product line, is owned by ORF Genetics, and so this is a consumer brand, and this is probably the first consumer brand in the world that is based on plant transgenic technology when we launched it in 2010. We're still doing that. It's completely owned by ORF Genetics. But at the same time, we are looking into different markets with our growth factors, human growth factors and so forth. And so we have continued to produce and sell those Isokine growth factors for stem cell research.
Okay, cool. That's very cool. And so shifting gears back to growth factors and cultured meat, what growth factor options currently exist for cell cultured meat, and how does Mesokine help cell cultured meat researchers?
Yes, we are more or less new to this field of cell cultured meat, and we have just been following this for the last few years just on the sideline. And we noticed that it was our belief that if you're going to really advance with this technology of cell cultured meat, you have to bring down the cost of those growth factors, and you have to bring down the cost dramatically from current prices that are now on the market. So we thought we could probably develop specific growth factors for cell cultured meat. And what I mean by specific is that we have a system that is more or less designed to produce large quantities. It's not such a good system to produce small quantities fast, but it's a really strong system if you need to produce large quantities, and as the cell cultured meat industry would actually be asking for. And we started developing a new product line of growth factors that we call Mesokine growth factors. And they are slightly different from our Isokine growth factors, is that we, in addition to the growth factor, we also include specific native barley seed proteins. So you are actually, when you're using these growth factors, you are, let's say you buy 1 gram of those growth factors, you have 1 gram of the growth factor plus about 3 grams of the specific native barley proteins. And there is a very simple reason that we include those barley proteins in the product. First of all, we have shown that these barley proteins can somehow stabilize the growth factor at least prior to use. So it increases the storage capacity of those growth factors and so forth. And also, if anything, they can even improve the bioactivity of those growth factors. So they're really helping the function of these growth factors. And secondly, by doing this, we can change our downstream processing technology and scale it even faster and bringing down the cost of those growth factors even more. We launched this Mesokine growth factor line for the cell cultured meat this summer. And today we have a few of the most important ones like IGF Basic and VGF and so forth. But we are adding to our portfolio. I think we have 7 growth factors now. And these are growth factors that are mostly being used by most of these cell cultured meat companies. But we are changing our portfolio. We are adding new growth factors to the portfolio, and also we are slowly transferring our portfolio from the human version of these growth factors into animal versions of those same growth factors. Porcine growth factors, bovine growth factors, and even avian growth factors. So this is something that we are working on, and first of those animal growth factors will be available next year.
A lot of the listeners of this show come from a non-scientific background, myself included. And so I want to ask at a very high level, what is the process of extracting growth factors from barley?
We have been doing this for 13 years. And in brief, you harvest the seed, you clean the seed, you dehull the seed, you grind them, and then you extract the total proteins from these seeds, and then then we have a 2-step purification protocol for the purification of these growth factors, and then you freeze dry them and you deliver them as freeze-dried product. This is a very scalable technology, so we can easily scale up to hundreds of milligrams, hundreds of grams, and even kilos. That's the reason I mentioned previously that this technology and our system is a very scalable and kind of, we believe, fit quite well with the cell cultured meat industry.
We are starting to see some companies in this space start their pilot plants and really start the process of scale. How do you see the scientific landscape changing for cell cultured meat in the near future? And I ask this because oftentimes we hear very soon to be release dates such as product in 2021 or 2022. And that often comes from entrepreneurs and investors in the space. Whereas speaking to scientists in the space, oftentimes they see a 10 plus year timeline. So directing that question to you, do you feel that we are on the verge of breakthroughs for scale, or do you feel like there's still a lot more research that needs to be done within the cultured meat space if we're talking about going to market?
It's difficult for me to say. First of all, we are not derived from this industry. We came from a different angle, just being a producer of growth factors. And we have noticed, for example, and we estimate that our technology development and so forth is quite much ahead of the cell cultured meat industry per se. So like we say, we are ready, but these companies are still not quite ready with their technology. But at the same time, I would say there are two things that actually will speed up this process beyond typical academic pace, so to speak. And mind you, our genetics is based on academia in the beginning, but also we have been on the commercial side for more than 10 years. So when I look at these companies today, I can see two things that are really going to help them and beyond academia. First of all, there's a lot of young people in these companies, very energetic, imaginative, creative people. And this is definitely going to speed up this process. And I was just simply amazed to see all these young people, smart, creative young people in these conferences and so on board of those companies. So that is definitely going to help this industry. Secondly, it seems that these companies are actually quite successful, at least some of them, in drawing in some investors. So they probably will be quite well financed, many of them, in quite contrast with, for example, when we were starting with developing our production platform. I think the atmosphere was a little bit more hostile or negative or more of indifference. So I think this will help this industry. And then you might also add to this that we are facing very serious environmental and ethical issues. And that will probably also speed up the technology development within this industry, just like what we are seeing in a completely different field, like development of COVID vaccines and so on. Maybe it took only 12 months to develop a vaccine, and this was unheard of a few years ago. So I think it's a long answer, but I think I'm quite optimistic that this can go much faster than a typical academia person would say.
Well, that's definitely very exciting to hear. And it is definitely exciting to see that things can move fast because of the people and enthusiasm in the space. When it comes to getting started with the Mesokyne, what's the cost range for a sample? Let's say there's a small team either raising funding or hasn't raised funding yet. How much would it cost to get a sample?
The easiest thing for these companies or a new team in this field is just to look at online and compare the price of these growth factors from different companies. We try to be 50-60% lower than the already cheapest growth factors that are on the market. Now I'm just talking about online list price. At the same time, we are delivering a very active, very bioactive growth factors, but this is just current prices, but we intend to bring down the cost of these growth factors up to 100-fold within 3 to 4 years.
Great. And so the next question I'm about to ask is because when you look at a lot of companies within the science industry, you have a very particular look and feel. Whereas when you go to the ORF Genetics website and see the branding, it's clear that branding and design is an important part of the company. And now that we know that BioEffect is a direct to consumer or a consumer facing product that comes directly from ORF Genetics, that could be related. But I want to ask you, especially as you served as the CEO of ORF Genetics for some time, what are your thoughts on branding and design?
We were not forced into thinking about branding and design and so forth. First of all, Iceland is part of the Nordic countries, and design has always been a very strong culture in these countries. So everything to do with design and branding has always been a very strong emphasis. And it's minimal. The style is minimalism, but we are very much driven by style and design. So this is just in our genes, so to speak. So for us, it didn't matter if we were thinking about selling growth factors to stem cell researchers or designing packaging and so forth for premium skincare product. The thinking is the same. It has to be well designed and it has to represent the content of the product. So we thought, okay, we had a fantastic BioEffect product that we launched in the beginning called BioEffect EGF Serum, and fantastic in terms of efficacy, but it had to be also represented by the design. So we have never compromised the designing or branding part of the product.
That's great. And I think you definitely get a sense of that just walking through Reykjavik with nice branding throughout. There's this one chocolate company that comes to mind with a wolf on it, just such a beautiful packaging and design and everything. And I like how you said design culture, because I think that's definitely what it is. And that's very cool. So from a consumer perspective, what do Icelanders think of cell cultured meat?
I can tell you that once we launched the Mesokine, or actually we sent out a press release in, I think, February this year about the Mesokines and what we were doing, because our company is relatively well known in Iceland through BioEffect and other things that we have been doing. So this came as quite a surprise. We were popular in the media. And just to summarize it, I think everyone is extremely excited about this and really understand what it is all about. Mind you, there has been discussion about like animal welfare, ethical issues here in Iceland, like in most other countries. And also we are very protective of the nature. We have a relatively unspoiled nature, so we can easily understand the environmental impact of heavy agriculture, traditional agriculture on land and nature. So for us to talk about it, it was not so difficult, and it was always very well perceived.
Great. And I think the last time I was in Iceland, I think I tried some shark. And so maybe in the future, we'll have cell cultured shark.
Yes, well, I mean, I have to congratulate you if you tried the shark, because not everyone liked the shark, but we have few of those really apparently not tasty food products, for at least for a person who has not been raised up in Iceland. Shark is one of them, but I think it will be easy to actually market cell cultured products here in Iceland. I think because also we are very much for new things. It's easy to present something new here in Iceland. We're usually very open for that. And in a way like you can find in US.
As we begin to wrap up, I'd like to ask you what your typical workspace is like. So if we were to walk into your office or perhaps bench at the lab, what would we see?
First of all, if you would walk into my office, you would see really nice mountains all over because we have a beautiful view. We are sitting on top of a hill here in Reykjavik and we just see mountains everywhere. So it's a very beautiful landscape from my window. But if you look at the company itself, we have here a large building. We have 70 people. And here you have everything from offices, designers, sales and marketing people to PhDs doing protein research or DNA or whatever. And then we have the production facility here. So we have everything under the same roof. So you would see a working environment that is composed of people with very different background, which is challenging. But that is something that we are also very proud of. We have people here with very different training, education and background and so forth, but everyone working as a one unit. And I think we have a very good atmosphere and you would sense that in a very stylish building, I have to say also.
Well, I did see a video of the greenhouse and that looked very cool. So I can imagine the main building looks very cool as well.
Yeah, of course. If you go to visit our greenhouse, that's a really photogenic place, an experience to see.
You can get in touch with Bjorn on LinkedIn and learn more about ORF Genetics at www.orfgenetics.com. Bjorn, do you have any last insights for our listeners today?
I hope you enjoyed this interview, but I can tell you that we are really excited about future development of the cell-cultured meat, and we really appreciate, and I can say that we respect these young people that are trying to do such a novel thing like the cell-cultured meat is, and I hope they will be successful. They really deserve that.
Bjorn, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your insights on the Cultured Meat and Future Food Show.
You're welcome. Take good care.
This program was produced by H Media. We'll see you soon.